Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. This is Irene's DIY Addiction and today I'll show you how to make an adorable basket out of egg trays and some twine. I've come across this cute basket at the famous Theriault auction. An antique Cupid doll in a basket looked so cute, I just couldn't stop thinking of creating something similar myself. I'll start with making a base and I'll be using egg trays. I'm preparing paper clay just like I have already shown in the videos about Easter eggs. I'm tearing the egg trays into pieces, pouring some hot water, shredding in a blender, squeezing the paper pulp out and adding a little white glue to make the clay. You want to use a mold for making the base. I'll be using a huge egg box. A toy was sold in it, I bought it and saved the package. If you don't have anything like that, don't worry, any plastic basing or a bowl will do. And you can make two pieces using the same mold to get a nice basket with a cover. Be sure to smear the inside of the mold before applying the clay, like with oil, to be able to remove the base from the mold effortlessly. I'm applying the clay in quite a thick layer, like half an inch, and pressing it well to remove gaps, if any. Using transparent mold helps control this better. You want to make the layer having more or less the same thickness everywhere. And as you can see, I'm applying a little extra clay along the edges to be sure the very edge of the base is not thinner than the rest of it. I'll trim it with scissors after drying. At the very end, I'm applying more white glue on the inside to reinforce the base. I'm using thinner glue, which I normally use for making cotton ornaments, to be sure it soaks the base well. After that, you want to let the base dry well. This will take several days. And then you can release the base parts from the mold. Now it's time to start weaving. You want to cut 10 pieces of twine of the length enough to wrap around the half of the base with a little extra. I've cut 20-inch pieces here. I'm pinning 2 weaver pieces to the top of the base. You will need 2 skeins of twine for this weaving. And I'm leaving the ends of about 10 inches to hang here. This is half of the length of the shorter twines. Then I'm pinning 3 shorter pieces on each side of the longer pieces, therefore we have 6 in total. And as you can see, I'm also gluing them onto the base to ensure they'll stay. Now I have 8 twine stakes on one side and 6 on the other side, and the 2 long pieces I'm going to work with. Next, I'm placing 4 more short pieces on the top crosswise and also securing them with glue and pins. I end up with 22 stakes and 2 long weavers. Now you want to loop one of the weavers under the stake which is closest to the weavers. So bring one weaver under the stake while the second weaver goes above the same stake, and then twist the weavers so that now the top weaver has become the bottom one and the stake is now looped in between the weavers. Again, bring one weaver under the next stake and let the other one go over the stake and twist the weavers again. To make it more clear, I'll show you the process using colored twines. The weavers here are red and white and the stakes are black. So I'm bringing the white weaver around and under the first stake and letting the red weaver float on top of the stake. And then I'm twisting the weavers to make an X after the first stake. Now we have the white weaver on top and the red weaver on the bottom. I'm placing the next black stake in between the weavers and twisting them. Now the red weaver is on top and the white weaver is on the bottom. I'm placing the next black stake here and twist the weavers again. Now the white one is on top once again and the red one is on the bottom. Again, the piece that's on top is going to go underneath the next stake. again top piece underneath. Actually, that's it. We're going to continue around in a continuous twining pattern around the basket until the entire base is completed. The only thing you want to pay attention to is to always twist the twines in the same direction, say counterclockwise, to be sure the pattern is nice and even. Be sure to keep pulling the weavers and the stakes while you're working to end up with nice and tight twining. The weavers are going to loop around themselves while you're weaving, so you'll have to untangle them by untwisting the twines while they are still in skeins. You'll have to do this throughout as they loop around really quickly. To ensure a nice and tight twining, I'm attaching it to the base using pins. The papier-mâché base is really convenient because of this. You can pin any embellishments on it, see how it turns out, or attach something and remove later without any problem. By the way, the twine which I use is a Dollar Tree find. This used to be a hanging flower bag. I liked the material and I had untwined it to use the twine later. This twine is made of paper, but here you can use any rope you like. You may even try using knitting yarn if you want to experiment a little. Using a base like this will let you use any soft weaving materials and still end up with the basket holding its shape well. You won't be able to weave a basket out of rope this way without a base. I'm twining the entire base like this. If you keep it tight, the base will not be visible at all. I'm continuing twining over the edge a little, and in the very end I'm trimming off the excess stake tips, applying white glue and bending them inwards, and pinning until they are dry. I'm twining the bottom part of the basket the same way. Here I've used 2 pieces of twine for each stake to get thicker stakes, and I think the weaving looks nicer like this. The twine I'm using is about 4 millimeters thick. If you want to use a thinner twine, you may want to use double twine to make the twining look fuller. I'm also twining till the very edge, cutting off the excess stakes, gluing them to the inner side and securing with pins till dry. Normally, basket edges have special weaving along the edge to look better, but I thought it could spoil the egg shape if I added the thicker braid along the edge, so I've decided not to use any extra edging here. Now the 2 parts are finished, and in order to make the basket more stable, I'm attaching a twine ring onto the bottom part to make a kind of a base. You may also want to use a metal ring wrapped in twine here. This will add extra weight and will let the basket sit even more securely. To connect the parts, I'm simply sewing the 2 halves together using the same twine. You can also use a box hinge or make the one yourself out of wire. Next, I'm going to decorate the insides of the basket. I'm attaching a piece of fabric to the basket edge. Sewing the edges together to end up with a fabric loop, and then gathering it on a thread in the middle. I've also made a little round pillow to place inside the basket. I'm making the lining for the upper part just the same way, sewing a strip of fabric along the edge, then sewing the fabric strip edges together, and finally gathering it in the middle. I've also added some stuffing to the top part to be able to keep a porcelain doll in the basket. I'm attaching lace trim to the lower part of the basket and more lace to the pillow. Here I've used a real antique lace to keep it look more like a vintage piece. Finally, I'll make ribbon flowers to embellish the basket, as on the inspo picture. I'm beginning with making roses. I've made pink and white roses for this project using 1/2 inch ribbon. To make a rose, I'm rolling the ribbon into a bud. You may want to twist the ribbon while assembling the flower. And then I'm securing the base with several stitches. The other way to make a rose is to gather a piece of ribbon on a thread and roll the resulting frill into a flower. You'll get bigger and fuller flowers like this. For making the leaves, I'm folding the ribbon into a triangle and gathering one of the sides on a thread. I've even assembled triple leaves out of these triangles. To be honest, here it was more of a trial and error method. I'm sure there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube about how to make ribbon flowers. I've decided to add forget-me-nots. To do a flower, I'm stitching a circle on a piece of ribbon or fabric and pulling the thread to gather a tiny round pad, which you can stitch over, making petals. Next, I'm making a satin ribbon limiter like on the reference picture to ensure the basket doesn't open completely. I'm threading the ribbon through the twining on the top part, and then after trying out and deciding where the limiter will work the best, I'm threading it under the twining on the bottom part too and tying the tips in a bow. And now all that is left is to decorate the basket with all the flowers and leaves. I've attached them to the limiter bottom part and a little bit on top, and attached a little bunch of flowers onto the lace trim on the other side of the basket. Since I'm going to display the basket opened all the time, I didn't bother with a fastener, but if you want to be able to lock the basket, the easiest way is to make ribbon ties. They are quick and easy to make and look really nice. You can also add more lace, trims, bows, or even beads, wherever your imagination brings you. I've placed a doll in the basket, of course, but you can come up with a more practical options like turning it into a gorgeous pincushion, or using for storing buttons or other craft supplies, or even making a flower arrangement in it. It can also be a nice gift for a baby shower or christening. Actually, there are so many ways to use it. And since I have already had a Cupid doll, very similar to the one which was up at the auction, I just couldn't help using it. This is a replica doll, not a real antique Cupid, but I absolutely love it. These little guys are so adorable, and my Cupid now has the cutest little basket ever. Well, I hope you liked today's project. Please let me know what you think of it down below. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in my next one. Bye!